Welcome back to the second part of our differentiation module. As you'll remember, our friend Samir, a mad ASV, has tried content differentiation where he used targeted objectives for his different students for the first time. He saw that Amit and Ria, who are normally distracted, were happy with the lower level of content, but some of his other students got bored. Let's see how we can help him plan this lesson better. We can do this through process differentiation. Process is how we teach. It is all the instructional strategies that we use and the different ways we encourage our students to learn and practice what we have taught. For example, some students may prefer to read about a topic while others may just prefer to listen. There are three approaches to differentiating the process. The first is the learning style. The second is having different groups of students work together at different times. And finally, stations, where learning materials are arranged across the classroom so students can lead their own learning. All of these are determined by what the students need and what their interests are. Let's take a closer look at the three ways in which we can differentiate the process. The first is to look at the learning styles. There are three big learning styles. The first is visual, where we see to learn, auditory, where we hear to learn, and kinesthetic, where we move to learn. Different students may prefer different learning styles, but there's no one learning style that fits a particular person. For example, if you're a visual learning style learner, such as Seema, you prefer lessons that employ images to teach, and you retain information better when it's presented in pictures, videos, graphs, and books. Seema learns better by using pictures, color, and diagrams in her note taking and studying. Whenever possible, she uses pictures instead of text. Auditory or oral learners remember information better when it's presented in lecture format, like speeches, audio recordings, and other forms of communication. They also like sound and music and can sing and play instruments. Sita and Anand are oral learners, and so telling them a story aloud, using sound and rhyme, etc., are very helpful when learning and studying. Replacing the lyrics of a favorite song with information they're learning is a very powerful way for them to memorize large amounts of information. Finally, kinesthetic or physical learners like Amit and Ria retain information best through hands on interaction and participation. For example, they learn multiplication by counting tiles and using an abacus. They also stay engaged while making models, taking things apart and putting them together, collecting items, and doing experiments. Another way to look at differentiation is by grouping. For different activities, you might prefer to have different groups of students. You can put them together based on their learning levels or their learning styles. The first would be if you were to do a whole class activity, you can have them in small groups, you can have them work in pairs, and finally, you can have them do individual work. Again, the kind of grouping you use would depend on the kind of activity that you want your students to do. If you want your students to watch a video, like Samir did, you can have them watch it as a whole class. But if you want them to do an experiment about the water cycle, they could do it in pairs or small groups instead. Finally, you can use stations or learning centers that is composed of one or more charts, texts, or other resources. They can be created based on the level of content or the learning style. For example, you can have a visual station with a video and pictures for students who are picking up the English language, or you can have a clay and beads math kinesthetic station. In this way, students can choose what content they want to engage with, when, and with whom. Now, if you look at Samir's lesson plan, he has differentiated for the process in his introduction and practice. You can see that he's playing a video for the whole class and then having his students use clay and paper plates to build a kinesthetic model of the water cycle, which is individual. And finally, his students are practicing station activities in pairs, which he has done based on their learning levels, and everybody is going to different stations at different times. Once again, to review, we've seen how to differentiate by content by using different objectives for different students, and how to differentiate by process based on students' learning styles, using stations, and making different groups. Remember that there is no such thing as a perfect process differentiation. Most of us use multiple learning styles, and we can learn effectively with different types of grouping for different topics and activities. As Samir executed this lesson, he saw that all his students were happy and learning well, but he was still not sure how ready they were for their unit tests. Let's see how he solved for that with the next step, which is product differentiation. Before we move on to the last and final video, those were a lot of strategies you could immediately begin using in your classroom. Now it's time for a quick stop and jot to synthesize this information. Pause this video and write down the actions you've already been doing, the ones you want to start doing, and the ones you want to stop doing. Take 20 seconds to do this.